And we're back on Second Street talking about our oil and gas sector and broader geopolitical issues. Uh, Gentlemen, we've talked about this, how this mess that we're in is largely our own, caused by Canadian government policy. We've been banning uh, the ability of industry to build pipelines to make sure that all these resources that we have in the ground can get to Canadians. So we're actually importing oil from different countries, including Russia, when we've got it in our own backyard. I mean, it makes no sense. But we do have a change happening at the federal political level. We've got the federal Liberals going through a leadership race. We've got the Conservatives, according to polls, primed to take over. Let's start first with the latter. If the Conservatives form government, what are your thoughts around what they have promised and how they would address some of these problems? Cody, are you optimistic that we'd see an improvement there?
I'm optimistic that the Canadian public is recognizing the importance of affordability and economic prosperity, and hopefully more of a Team Canada, this unified approach, which includes all of our resources. We need to bring back job creating investment. We need to get projects approved. The other thing we haven't been talking about with Donald Trump is all of these executive actions, these executive orders are going to make the US even more competitive for investment. So, how are we going to
Mhm.
right size our regulatory regime so that we can attract investment in AI data centers and pipelines and food production, forestry production, hydroelectricity, nuclear power development, oil and natural gas? There's a whole fleet of regulatory issues that we have that we need to work on. And the next
Mhm.
federal government needs to bring Canadians together, focus the public's attention on what really helps pay the bills and how we can work together to maximize the value of our resources.
Let me just clarify, and then I want to come to Ed. When you talk about Trump's executive orders making the U.S. more competitive, you're not talking about the tariffs. You're talking about policy changes to make it easier for the U.S. to be more competitive around oil and gas, all industry. Could you just clarify that?
Yeah, so the U.S. was already deemed more competitive than Canada for investment. We've seen like $670 billion of resource investment canceled or stalled in Canada the last 10 years. So the U.S.
Mhm.
was already getting a lot of that those investment dollars, those projects. Canadian companies, even buying U.S. companies, investing in the U.S. We need to look at our regulatory system and make sure that we are able to compete. It's like putting a player on the ice and he's missing a skate blade. He can't compete.
Mhm.
That person cannot
Yeah.
compete. So we need to really right size our regulatory environment so that Canadian families can benefit from the job creating investment.
Ed, what Cody's talking about, making our environment more competitive so that industry can compete on the world stage. Let's say the politicians set that regulatory environment in place. Will industry and investors respond, or do they feel a bit burned that the past decade or so has been so tough on this industry? What's your take?
Yeah, you know, we can have a change in government, um, and investors are still going to be shy because all it takes is another change in government 5 years down the road,
Mhm.
and you know, we're stuck with a Mark Carney type who's parroting the green agenda again, that branding, and they're left
Mhm.
holding the bag. We've seen Total and Shell and all these big players pull out of Canada because it's not secure. And so we have to somehow um, sell them on the notion that we're a secure place to put their dollars, that they can earn a return. And we saw that with
Mhm.
the LNG. It's not only a federal issue; it's a provincial issue as well, with the Clean BC program mandating net zero on those plants. Nobody's going to build an
Mhm.
LNG plant on a net zero basis because they're exposed on the power price. So they all pulled out. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to attract those dollars back into Canada and make the Totals and the Shells, et cetera, and the Chevrons secure that they can put their dollars here and they won't be wasted.
It sounds like we need some of those diplomatic efforts that Cody was talking about that are oh so important to convince people to come back to this country. Thank you both for taking a few minutes to chat with us today about this important topic.
Thank you, Colin.
Thanks, Colin.
So what do you think about this issue? We'd love to hear your feedback. You can send us an email at ideas@thenewsforum.ca. Thanks for tuning in. We hope to see you again next week.